Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a look under the hood of some really high-level music curation. We're going to completely deconstruct the exact technical methodology behind building those emotionally resonant, totally continuous Afro house DJ sets. You know, the electronic music scene is just incredibly saturated right now. But if you've ever stood on a beach at sunset and it literally felt like the music was completely synchronized with the ocean and the sky, well, you've experienced exactly what we're about to break down today. Because what separates a run-of-the-mill DJ from a highly sought-after luxury curator is mastering this very specific acoustic architecture.
Here's how we're going to map this all out. First, we'll talk about curating luxury coastal sets. Then, we'll dig into the 1114 BPM harmonic foundation, outline the four-phase tied architecture, explore organic textures and seamless transitions, and finally, look at how to prevent generic algorithm drift.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1. Curating luxury coastal sets and really establishing that destination atmosphere. Before we get bogged down in the technical weeds, let's just talk about the vibe of the environment itself. I want you to imagine you're playing a residency at a luxury beach club, right? Or maybe a sunset terrace or some expansive desert resort. The music in these spaces absolutely cannot just be a random playlist of club bangers. It has to evoke that sweeping golden hour connection between earth, rhythm, and surf. As a professional DJ managing these coastal residencies, your whole mindset has to shift from just being an entertainer to becoming a sonic architect. Your ultimate goal here is to curate a deeply emotional, immersive experience. It should feel meditative and connected to the earth, seamlessly blending ancient rhythmic memory with modern electronic sophistication. We're talking about a moving ceremony here, not just a performance.
So what exactly is the nomadic tide aesthetic? Well, it's a continuous genre hybrid. To get that feeling of global cultural unity, you've got to blend the warm, hypnotic, danceable grooves of Afro house with the profound emotional depth of organic coastal downtempo. And you might be wondering, why lean so heavily on Latin and African percussion for the rhythm? Here's a really fascinating fact. Low-frequency acoustic percussion, like a really deep hand drum, naturally mimics the ambient rolling frequencies of ocean waves. So by using these organic elements, you are physically anchoring the listener right into their environment. It creates this incredibly sensual, immersive, tribal energy that just melts perfectly into luxury surroundings.
That brings us to Section 2, the 1114 BPM harmonic foundation. This is literally the engine of the mix.
Building all this seamless atmospheric magic requires a super precise engine, and 114 BPM is your gravitational center. It's the absolute heartbeat of the tide. But why 114 exactly? Technically speaking, it hits this fascinating psychological sweet spot. Think about it. A resting human heart rate hovers around 60 to 100 beats per minute, while peak aerobic dancing usually demands something up in the 120 to 130 range. 114 bridges that gap perfectly. It's fast enough to keep a hypnotic Afro house pulse going on the dance floor, but it's slow enough to let organic percussion and lush down-tempo textures actually breathe. If you push the tempo higher, the natural swing of Afro house shakers and hand drums starts to feel rushed or kind of digitized and quantized. Locking into 114 lets that rhythmic intensity groove naturally, keeping a stable, luxurious energy no matter if you're in a meditative chill phase or hitting a peak ritual moment.
Now, this 114 BPM engine needs a very specific harmonic partner, D minor. In this framework, we call it the ritual root note. In music theory, D minor has this historical association with melancholic grounding. It gives you this deep, earthy, cinematic weight that acts as the absolute perfect emotional canvas. Plus, it's extremely compatible with Afro house melodic structures, working as a structural bridge between different moods. D minor naturally supports both the reflective vibes of downtempo and the highly hypnotic energy of a peak dance floor. Sticking to this specific key sets you up for incredibly long, beautiful blends and layered transitions without ever forcing the listener's ear to adjust to something jarring.
Moving right along to Section 3, let's map the journey with the four-phase tide architecture.
With your tempo and key completely locked in, the nomadic tide framework follows a strict chronological journey across 4 phases. It's basically mapping the natural progression of a day at the coast. Phase 1 is the opening, the sunrise awakening. This is all about soft, organic textures, breath-like ambient pads, and really minimal percussion. People are just arriving, settling in, and psychologically shedding their daily stress. Then comes Phase 2, development. This is your rhythmic build. You start dropping in hand drums, marimba tones, and a deep bass groove. A pro DJ is constantly reading the room here, looking for foot tapping or body sway to know the crowd is ready to move. That leads to phase 3, the peak. This is where the Afro House dance ritual energy totally ignites. You're layering heavy percussion to create this massive emotional uplift. Finally, we hit phase 4, closure, or the sunset decay. As the physical light fades, you ease everyone back into a down-tempo chill, using spacious reverb and fading echoes to close out the ritual and leave the audience feeling deeply, deeply grounded.
Okay, part 4, organic textures and seamless transitions. This is the stylistic mortar holding it all together.
The core philosophy here is brilliantly simple. One evolving ocean in a stable key ecosystem. You have to stop thinking about your set as jumping from track A to track B. This methodology demands what we call tide harmonic mixing. You're treating the entire 2-hour set as one single breathing organism. Harmonic shifts should be gradual overlays, not sudden aggressive drops. So how do you actually pull that off? It takes very long, patient EQ blends and looping polyrhythms. You have to let the rhythmic shifts, the percussion, lead the way, by slowly sneaking in a new shaker or conga pattern while gently rolling off the bass of the previous track. The groove feels completely continuous. It becomes a single, unbreakable wave of sound.
To maintain that continuous ecosystem, nailing the analog aesthetic is absolutely crucial. You want to lean hard into hand drums, congas, djembes, and tribal shakers. That's what evokes that ancestral, ceremonial feeling. Your bass lines need to be deep and warm. We're talking smooth sub-bass here, nothing aggressive or distorted. When you're bridging those emotional mix phases we talked about earlier, you're going to rely on organic synth pads that feel like ocean wind. By filtering the high-end frequencies of those airy analog textures, you smooth out the emotional gaps without any sharp digital-sounding contrasts. And don't be afraid to occasionally layer in natural field recordings, like distant waves or wind, to fully anchor the listener. The whole goal is a warm, spatial, deeply analog mix.
Now, as your set crests the peak and enters phase 4, that sunset decay we mentioned, your transitions need to become incredibly atmospheric. This is where you pull out specific tricks, like manipulating atmospheric reverb tails to smooth things out. By simply extending the decay time on your reverb unit, you can take a rhythmic element like a tribal chant or a drum hit and let it wash out until it literally turns into an ambient pad itself. You let the percussion lead the downward shift in energy, while those sweeping reverb tails carry the emotion forward seamlessly. The music is actually physically mimicking the fading daylight, using deep spatial depth and echoing downtempo elements to gently bring everyone back down to earth.
Finally, let's hit section 5, preventing generic algorithm drift and guarding your ecosystem. This whole framework isn't just about sounding good, it's about actively guarding the ecosystem against automated homogenization. The nomadic tide methodology forces continuity, warm hand percussion, and a real emotional arc. But if you just hand the reins over to autoplay features or generic platform playlists, you're going to fall victim to algorithm drift. Why? Because the modern attention economy programs streaming algorithms to push for heavy EDM drops and constant jarring energy spikes just to keep passive listeners hooked. The music devolves super fast into disjointed track-to-track jumping, robotic timbres, and aggressive industrial noise. By aggressively enforcing your strict 114 BPM and D minor boundaries, you are forcing the algorithm to stay locked in that specific atmospheric pocket. You're literally protecting the luxury coastal vibe from turning into a generic commercial pop club. Armed with this architectural blueprint, we really have to rethink how we approach musical curation in these spaces. The next time you step behind the decks at a coastal residency, looking out over the sand as the sun goes down, you have to ask yourself, are you just there playing tracks, or are you building an ancestral experience? So, I'll leave you with this. Is your next set a performance or a ritual? Keep that 114 BPM D minor framework in your back pocket, trust in those organic textures, and go curate something truly unforgettable. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer.